Hey, what's up and welcome to the Beyond Sundays podcast. I'm the host, Brett Stewart, and today my co-host back with me is Braden Crow.
What's up? It is awesome to be here. Super looking forward to this guest and one of my great friends and all the conversation that comes with it.
Yeah, you are going to be blessed tremendously. I wish that this was a video podcast, and I wish that you could just see the way our guest just talks and loves and the beauty he holds and he carries. And you would be just totally comforted by his presence. I feel safe, loved, and seen all the time when I'm talking to him. And so today, our guest, we call him Zan. His name is Zazanya Gaddam. Did I say that right?
You got it right.
Yes, because in our Texan American accent, we would say Gaddam, but it is just Gaddam.
Gaddam.
Yes,
Gaddam.
Got it right.
I got it right. So Zan, tell us, who are you? Where are you from? And what brought you to Abilene, Texas? And then we'll just go from there.
I get that question all the time. Why did I get to Abilene, Texas? But before that, I don't know how I feel about the video podcast. I'm already nervous just for the audio podcast. I don't know how I feel about the video one. But yeah, I'm Zazanya Gaddam. Zazanya means God listens, God hearkens. It's from the scriptures, but with a different spelling. Raju means king. Gaddam means beard. Literally, my family's name is Beard. So
Beard?
yeah, I have a beard.
So you can't ever not have a beard.
That's
Living
how
up to the family name.
Live up to the family name. And honestly, if you look through the great theologians of the world, they all had a beard, and usually a long, pointy beard, or a long, like, bushy beard. So, Braden, I
gotta do something.
You got to do something. It's too clean over there. One time I grew out, it was like it was 2 years ago, last like fall/winter, and I was getting a pretty bushy beard, and I loved it, and my wife was not a fan, and in her most nice way, she told me, "You're shaving that." So anyway, so we've got Zan, so that's what your name means.
Yeah.
Where are you from? What brought you to Abilene? And
Yeah. I'm from India, from a city, Bangalore. It's in a state called Karnataka. I came, by the way, they ask which part, southern part of India.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, yeah, I came to U.S. in 2018 fall. I came to school here in a university, and that's what brought me to Abilene. And yeah, I do get asked question, why in the world you ended up in Abilene? I genuinely don't have answer for that, except for God brought me here, and it's been great. And I'm really blessed to have experienced Abilene as my first ever international spot of getting outside my country.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are you studying? You came to Abilene Christian University, correct?
Yes.
So what is your field of study? And then also, what do you do here at Beltway Park Church? Because that's where I met you. And so you can tell us a little bit about what you're doing here.
Yes. Actually, I said yes to the university, but it's not Abilene Christian, but it's Hardin Simmons University.
You did Hardin Simmons University. Well, that's why I was asking, because we have, for those who don't know, we have 3 Christian universities and then like 2 or 3 other colleges. So for being and we're not a small town, but for being the size we are, when people talk about, oh yeah, I go to college in Abilene, I'm like, a little more context.
Yeah, narrow it down.
Narrow it down. Yes, you went to Hardin Simmons University.
Yeah.
Yes.
I went to Hardin Simmons University. I did a Master's of Divinity with a specialization in pastoral ministry.
Okay.
So what am I doing at Beltway Park Church? I started an internship in my final year of Master's, and I was doing it as a practical ministry for a supervision class. And that's how I ended up in Beltway with the internship. And yeah, that's where I met amazing people and pastors and friends. And I was very thankful for the community that God had for me over here at Beltway. And it's been great since then.
That's good.
I've had another opportunity, a privilege to continue the internship, and I'm currently year 2 intern and at the same time internship coordinator. I think my intern pastor would say that I did a decent job.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I want to tell you too that your presence here at Beltway, not only, I guess, do you feel like you've been impacted by other people that have been here at Beltway, but I know that every person who has encountered you, Zan, at the church has been profoundly impacted, encouraged, loved, even challenged by just who you are and what you carry. And so I want to say thank you just for being you and being here, because it's been a blessing to us. And so it matters not of, internship or not, just who you are I believe has had an impact on our staff, on the other interns, on our people. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. That's definitely humbling and affirming. And it's good to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about your family. And I know your dad is in ministry.
Yes.
In India.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that. I know you've shared with us before a testimony video actually of one particular encounter, but just tell us a little bit about your family and what ministry looks like in India. And then we're just going to kind of roll the conversation into what does it look like to be a believer and a minister in India, and what does it look like to be a believer and a minister in America? And then we're just going to kind of play off of our cultures and hopefully find somewhere in the middle that is a goal for all of us to strive to.
Yeah. So, as you said, my dad is a pastor. He's been in ministry for about 47 years now. He is 61 right now. And pretty much since his teenage, he's been in ministry. He, along with his friend, built their first ever church while they were 17.
Wow.
They raised funds by themselves. They put their own money into it, and that church still exists, and it's still being under the supervision, if you could say, or discipleship under my dad. And that's kind of like a huge testimony for him and for me to see how his teenage was. Since his teenage, he's been following God and pursuing after his plans and his kingdom. Yeah. So that's my dad. My birth mom passed away while I was a young kid. I have 2 elder sisters. Both are married. They are kind of like my mom. They stepped in that place and they took care of me, even though they are not like there's not like huge gap between us. One is 4 years older than me, and the other one is just 1 year. But they still, even to this day, they make sure that I get everything right, like moms do.
Yeah. Sweet.
So yeah, I have wonderful nieces and nephews and in-laws. Everyone are deeply passionate about God and His kingdom, and they do in every capacity to continue to, first of all, raise their children according to the Word of God, and also see that they serve God and His kingdom in simple things possible. Yeah. And yeah, my dad has been in ministry for almost 47 years now, and he has been in several leadership positions for conventions, and also have built several churches in India. Currently, he has been the founder and the director of a ministry called Messiah Mission Church of India. And the vision of that is to reach the unreached millions in India through church planting, discipleship, VBS, Bible school, and just everything and anything possible
Wow.
through the ministry. And that's our family and our ministry. And how does it look like ministering in India? I
Yeah.
think it's definitely, if you're looking on the serious side, the persecution and the things that the church experience is real, and it's tangible. It happens every week, every day, and every Sunday. You hear stories about a pastor being hit or a church being attacked and
Being
church
robbed,
being
being vandalized. Yeah.
And that's so very true when it comes to church ministry, and persecution is real. And but my dad and I, we always talk about this over phone. Is like that is still spreading the gospel.
Yeah.
And through what they are doing to the church, to what they're doing to the pastors and the community, the Christian, the believers, they still get to see God moving. And why this people get to question is like, why are they being persecuted? Like, why are they putting the church down? There are these genuine questions that people ask, and even in that, God's name is being glorified. Even in that, God's name is being proclaimed throughout India and throughout the world. Wherever we see persecution, it just doesn't stop with persecution. There is other side to that. And that's on a serious note and of the ministry side. But apart from that, on the east side, it's just like family. It's just like community. If you're a pastor leading a church, the church looks up to the pastor for each and everything. I was just telling Pastor Brett a little while ago, it's about the people, like if they have a kid, they look up to the pastor. Pastor, I want your kid, I want you to name my child, and can you give a name? And that's to the extent where they give authority to the pastor to be in their family. And there are some times pastor is involved in the matchmaking process, and whatever the pastor says goes in that decision-making process. And that's how, to what extent pastor's involvement is in a family. And it's not just like someone who is in a spiritual authority over the family, but also they look at the pastor and say like, we want you to be actively involved in our family affairs, and we would allow you to do that. And
so it's like, I mean, it's a father, grandfather, like wisdom leadership position in people's lives. And it's not like a dictator.
Exactly.
It is like wise grandfather, and they're invited into that. Wow.
And sometimes I know in America you might go thinking is like, that's too much of involvement of pastor in our family affairs. But we do draw a decent line of to what extent this could be done. And this is, again, like you said, it's not dictatorship. It's like us allowing the pastors to have that amount of authority and give us spiritual guidance, and at the same time, make them help them make choices, but don't make choices for them. They have their own decision-making process, and we just walk along with that as pastors and ministers.
It's interesting because here in America, here in the Western world, we look to the pastor for like the sermon and the teaching. But other than that, then we look to others, or maybe we would have our own mentors, or maybe some of us do. A lot of people don't. But yeah, we look to the pastor primarily for teaching, for knowledge, not for that involvement of like leadership and guidance in who we are and what we do. And so, that right there is a unique perspective of ministry being more like family relationship. Rather than tasks and teachings.
That's something, Brett, you just said that word, but Zazanya, I was going to go back to it. You said that ministry in church is a lot like family, and Brett, stop me if we're going into this too early, but that makes me think a lot about how we spend our time, and specifically with whenever you think about things as family, it's inevitably going to require more time. And so I know that's something that's big on Zazanya's heart. I'd love for him to kind of elaborate on, and just the whole idea of how do you see time and see people. And we kind of talked about it in introductions, but you are so great with stopping for people and listening to people and caring for people. You didn't really get to talk a lot about it with your internship role this year, but part of your role is giving a coaching meeting or a one-on-one to every intern weekly, I think, and really listening to them and hearing how they're doing and how you can encourage them and empower them. And so I see that family theme showing up again there. So I just would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, let's get into that. So before we started recording the podcast, I asked Zan, is there a tension or is there a difference between what ministry and even just leadership? I don't want to limit this to just like church employment or having some kind of like official role for a church, but let's just say leadership and faith in general. Is there a difference or a tension in how that plays out in America and how we operate and how it does in India? And so before the podcast, Zan and I were talking about, this way of, he has learned it, and I'll let him talk about how it's been a challenge and how it differs from ministry time in India. But we schedule everything out and we don't leave much room for margin. And so Zan and I were both talking about what our day looks like today, and it's absolutely ridiculous. From 8:30 to like honestly 8 p.m. I'm like appointment after appointment after meeting, go to this, go to this, go to this. And so yeah, Zan, kind of tell us what you've experienced coming over to India, to America, how it's been a challenge, and then how it's different from how just ministry time looks in India in the culture that you were raised in.
Yeah. I know you both gave me a lot. Tell me if I'm not covering all that ground.
Usually when I ask a question, I ask like 8 questions. And so just pick one and we'll go there.
I think for us back in India, this is how I grew up. Others might be different. This is my story. And this is how I've seen my dad grow up and lead his ministry. And he definitely is a pastor. He's a lead pastor, and he has so many churches and so many pastors calling him. There was a time I was literally frustrated with him, and I even told him, Dad, you literally spend 14 hours in a day over phone.
Wow.
Talking to pastors. And it's like, son, yes, but I don't know what to do. I just want to be there for everyone. And they just want to talk with me, and they just want to be poured into and be there for them. Mm-hmm. And more than anything else, as you said, Pastor Braden, is one of the biggest thing for us is to be there for people, be present. All of us want that. India, America, Europe, wherever you go, everyone has that heart for us to okay, I want to be there for this person. Mm-hmm. And then we have not only this person, I have 13 other people that I want to be with.
Right.
Given week, I want to be with 20 other people, and I want to minister to them. And it's always been a challenge. It always has been a difficulty to balance. And at the end of the day, my dad still goes through that, and he still does that. And I've been complaining. That doesn't change. But at the end of it, I would see his heart of wanting to be there for people, even if that means that he's running late for his next meeting.
Yeah.
And I think you did mention, before we started recording, it's Jesus just stopped along the way for people.
Yeah.
And if he saw someone in a need, and he still stopped. And there were moments where I'm on a mission over here. Don't interrupt me. But at the same time, he would still go back and it's you know what? I'll still be there for you.
Yeah.
And he stopped along the way for people, and no matter how many people showed up, he was still there for them. And I think that is a good leadership example that I've learned from my dad, in terms of like leadership and in terms of their serving and being there for people. And coming from that context, being in that context for 26 years, and that is when I came to US after 26 years, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to rapidly learn a crash course about putting things on my calendar and scheduling things and being ahead of time, not just on time, being ahead of time and trying to balance that has definitely been a crash course for me. It has been good, but at the same time, it has been difficult and challenging. There have been times that I have to drag my feet to that particular meeting because I'm still running late and I'm so frustrated about it. Mm-hmm. And that has been a difficult balance for sure, because over here, just like you said, we like to have everything planned, put everything on the calendar a month ahead, if possible, even a year ahead, schedule everything. And for some people, like pastors who are in a higher authority position, that is important. And trying to understand that, trying to find the balance of that is very challenging, and it's very important. Yeah. And I think I may be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I think no one has ever figured it out.
No, not at all. I find myself being one of the most scheduled or task-oriented people, and still in the midst of it, in the midst of accomplishing all of the tasks, I still feel like somehow I'm missing or I am robbing someone or myself of encounter or of opportunity. You know, we mentioned Jesus. Like Jesus, let's talk about relational ministry, because Jesus was with the disciples 24/7, and it wasn't, probably very little of it was agenda or planned. It was just living life with them. But just like you said, even when there was something to go to, whoever they encountered along the way, whoever Jesus encountered along the way, he was present with them. He paused. He took the time to love them, to serve them, to invest into them. And, you know, if I've been to other countries and haven't been to India yet, but I've been to Africa several times. And you know, when they say 10 o'clock, like it might be 10 or it might be 12:30. But, and like, it's frustrating for a Western mind, because it's like, no, I put this on my calendar. In fact, you said 10. I showed up 10 minutes before 10 so that I would be there on time. But like, I found myself frustrated, but then I also found myself inspired, because when they told me why they were late, and they wouldn't have even considered themselves late because they got to where they were going. Yeah. But the mindset is, I'm going to get where I'm going, but I encountered this person along the way, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity. I didn't want to miss the divine appointment or encounter to be with that person, to minister to them, to love them, to serve them. And they kind of have this like, I don't worry, I'm going to get to where I'm going, but I'm also my eyes are going to be open for the moments and the people along the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think that's one of the my biggest challenge to understand. Like Pastor Braden Crow over here, I had a meeting with him last week over a lunch, and I was genuinely asking him, like, how do you do this well? Like, you do a good job of your scheduling, your meetings, and the biggest tip he gave me was like, you just get to have control over your time as much as you can, and you're going to be good at it. And if you're not, and it's fine. And walking in that place has been a biggest challenge for me. That was one of the biggest culture shock experience for me. And back in India, I want to talk to this person, I'm going to call him. But over here, I have to text people first. It's like, hey, do you have few minutes? Like, I want to talk. And
Yeah, isn't that? Well, even if you're going to go to someone's house, I know in other cultures, you just show up.
Yep.
But here, you call them or text them a few days in advance. Hey, is it all right if I come by at 10 a.m., on Saturday, and you're texting them Monday?
Yeah, yeah. And those were the cultural shock aspects that I had to learn the hard way sometimes. And sometimes I was quick in learning. Thanks to God for helping me with that, because if I would have just stuck in that place of not being able to look at those cultural significances, because at the same time, I don't want to nullify the priorities that people have over here. And by having things on the calendar, you're also saying, hey, you're my priority, and that's why you're on my calendar. And that's why I want to be here for you.
Yeah.
And you're important for me. And I think the middle point of all this is like, at the end of the day, you're going to tell that person, I love you, I care for you, I'm here for you. I do that all the time because, as you can guess, I'm late to everything. I tell people, it's like, I'm an Indian, so bear with me. I love you guys. I care for you. And at the same time, I have my cultural aspects that I'm still being challenged and I'm growing in it.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot better. There were several times in my first year of internship, I was late to things by 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And I used to apologize. I respect that time. I text them ahead and say, hey, I'm running late. I'm sorry. But I think I'm doing better now. It's gotten to less than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So hopefully I'll still get to grow in that. But at the same time, like letting people know that you love them is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zan, I think you've done an awesome job with that. I remember having that conversation with you last year and, just having to talk about the different cultures of like, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot of validity to, the culture that you're familiar with spends time with people and sees people and isn't in a rush to see people off. But in our culture, if you show up late, that isn't a respect to someone. That isn't seeing a person in the American lens. And so I remember having that conversation and it's attention. It's, Zan, you said it, but if you put something on the calendar, it communicates it's a priority. But also at the same time, if you load up your calendar
Right.
and you don't give yourself margin, then if everything's a priority, nothing is a priority.
Yeah.
And there has to be a balance there.
Yeah. And then everything is rushed because, if you accidentally show up to a meeting late or someone shows up to a meeting late, or it's going a little bit longer, but that's because someone is opening up the depths of their heart. But you're like, I've got to wrap this up in 10 minutes because I got to go get to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like what? Like think of the opportunities that we're missing out on because, Zan and I were talking before this. Sometimes to minister to someone, it looks like sitting down with them for 4 hours in India. And that might be a weekly thing.
Yeah.
And it's different. I think we need to be more aware of what's spiritual and what's cultural, because sometimes we spiritualize the calendar so much. And there is something important to, I put you on my calendar, I'm prioritizing you. You are important. But like what Braden just said, if everything on the calendar is important, then nothing is important. And then the things that aren't on the calendar don't even get thought about. Yeah. They don't even get any time or attention, and they're kind of disregarded for. And so as we talk about this, I want to challenge people in their own calendar, whether it's for your family, your friends, your children, whether it's for church or the things that the areas where you serve, to kind of really challenge yourself as to what does my schedule look like, and is this spiritual or is this cultural? Because again, we look at the life of Jesus. One of the things that just annoys me about Jesus is he was never rushed. Like the dude takes his time everywhere he goes, and he is not worried about, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done, because guess what? it's every moment and encounter that he has, that this is what I came to do. I came to reveal the kingdom of God in every moment that I encounter. You know, Jesus wasn't like, all right, hey, you know, Sermon on the Mount, it's going to be at 5 p.m. at this location. No.
Doors open at 4:45.
Yeah, doors open at 4:45. You know, ask the usher to get you your seat. But like, it's just this, it just happens. And I think sometimes we miss out on the beauty of what God wants to do because we're so focused on what we need to do or what we think we need to do. Sometimes the things on our calendar need to be scratched off, or they need to be eliminated, or we need to give them more margin time. Like if I'm going to meet with somebody that I know, like I need to have a good amount of time with them. A good amount of time shouldn't be, okay, you've got an hour, 15 minutes, because it might take an hour, 15 minutes for the person to feel safe, to feel heard, and to kind of get to the depths of their soul. Maybe I just need to be like, you know what? I'm going to walk with this person, so I'm just going to designate the morning.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different way of thinking about it. And I know that challenges me as I talk about it. It's like, well, but you got to prove your calendar, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. What about these things that need to be done? And so I don't know. I just think that we need to sometimes acknowledge that even the good things we want to do, God has other things that he wants to do. Like so much, we do so much for him, but what if there's a way of finding balance that we create the opportunities to do things with him, like what he's going to do? Zan, you said something earlier before we recorded about how like this is a big world. It is a large world, and there's so much beauty in it. And it really challenged, you said nothing more after that, but it really challenged me of like, how much beauty do I miss in the day because I'm either trying to create beauty or maximize beauty or leverage beauty, but yet I'm not taking it in and just creating the place to encounter the presence of God. It's not encounter the calendar of God, right? Yeah. When we want to meet with the Lord, it's not, hey, I want to encounter the tasks of God. No, I want to encounter the presence of God. Yeah. So, let's kind of talk about, you know, we both mentioned like we want to find balance. So for you and your upbringing in India, you want to find balance to scheduling, to prioritizing, to being able to steward and to maximize what you have. But then, you know, me and Braden, we want to learn and to find the balance of what does it look like to be with people with no agenda other than to simply be with them and love them. Yeah. So.
Yeah. That's I think you said it well, like being open to God's divine appointments is very important. And sometimes we can go saying like, this is what I want to do. This is what is on my calendar. I'm just going to stick to this. And sometimes we are missing what God wants to do in that place. And one of the biggest thing that I learned the hard way again, while I'm talking all of this, it's not like that I'm professional in this, I've figured this out or anything. I'm still like on both the sides trying to learn these things and continually seeking God, like, okay, God, what is your priority and how can I be here to fulfill your priority for me at this point of time? Like, I think I have to say this. I'm sitting here, I have a 12 p.m. lunch with some of the pastors, and I'm thinking like, okay, I need to go to that next. And here we are talking about time and going to the next thing. I think I have received this a lot. That is extending grace. Yeah. Extending grace towards others, and most importantly, extending grace to yourself has been one of the way that God has helped me in the times where I was not able to keep up my time and I was not able to prioritize everyone else. If I have to give up my homework while I was in school for meeting with someone, I had to show myself grace. You know what? That can wait, but this is important to me. And this is what God has brought my way. And having that grace and having that open-mindedness towards what God is doing and being open to divine appointments. It's really good and healthy to have a scheduled calendar and having things on your calendar, but at what point it's going to become not a priority when you're having everything else on your calendar and you don't know what to go to. And at the end of the day, for me, it's about just letting the person in front of me know that I love for you and I care for you and I'm here. And when I go to the other person, like I have to later, which I will be running late to for the lunch appointment, I have to tell them that I love you and I care for you. There was other thing that I had to do also, but here I am right now, and just let them know that please show me some grace, because today I'm literally living that grace and experiencing that grace with schedules. Before you came in, I was telling Pastor Brett how I totally damaged my schedules and my appointments today. I was about to take a hospital shift for a friend today, which was on my calendar a month ago. I forgot about it, and I scheduled all meetings today. And my supervisor is like, I may have to ask you to cancel your schedules. But he was like, you know what? If you can get on call at some point today, that will be great. But from next time onwards, let's try not to get to this place. And that's grace towards me.
Yeah.
And I have to extend that grace towards myself. I don't know if that question answered your point directly, but that's how I try to be there. And I don't want to rush things.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be frustrating when you're trying to rush things too.
Yeah, as you said that you don't want to rush things, like sometimes, and this is going to be a bold confession, sometimes I cheapen the gospel because of rushing things or because of, well, okay, I got to stop this because I got to get to this. I got to get to this. I got to get to this. And honestly, that is not how the gospel encountered us. The gospel encountered us where we were, when we were, and Holy Spirit showed up for us. It was his presence that met us despite our circumstances, despite what was going on. And so it's just such a challenge. It's this concept of moving from accomplishing things for the Lord to accomplishing things with the Lord. Like if we gave more of our time to God, we would learn to trust that God's going to do what God's going to do, and he's going to create the opportunities for us to do it with him. And so, a shift in my mind that I'm working on is like, okay, I need to stop doing things for God as if it can't happen without me. But now I want to do things with God and create the margin and the space to just be ready, to be available. And when God says it, when he opens it, when he puts that person or that opportunity in front of me, then I'm there and I get to partner with what God is doing as opposed to telling God to partner with what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that as you were talking, it made me think, what would it look like to position ourselves so we never get into a position where we have to choose, do we rush or are we late? Does that make sense? And what does it look like to create that buffer of, something I really try to do is I want a buffer between each meeting I do. Like I want there to be 30 minutes. I want there to be an hour. I want there to be an hour and a half. If I have a lunch meeting with part of my job is meeting with missions partners, meeting with missionaries, meeting with other pastors and really hearing how they're doing and how I can, counsel them and encourage them. And if I know that I really want this person to be seen and heard, maybe it's not just allocating 12 to 1. Maybe it's allocating 12 to 1:30, 12 to 2.
Yeah.
And just in case, maybe I can have this meeting at 3, that, the next meeting at 3. That way there's an opportunity to really see someone if they need that.
Yeah.
And, but I'm thinking about practicals on something else that I talked with Zan about is, I don't know off the top of my head how many hours there are in a week, but I think the biggest lie that Brett's doing some math right now, so let's crunch some numbers. But, I think a big lie we have is there's just not enough time in the week. We're too busy.
It's 168 hours.
Yeah, there's 168 hours in the week.
Yeah.
And
Okay, hold on. Let's do this. If you work an average of 40 hours a week full time, how many hours did I just say there are in a week?
168.
So 168, and you work 40 hours a week. Say you sleep 8 hours.
Let's do 8, yeah.
Let's say you sleep 8 hours a night, which I know most of us are not sleeping 8 hours a night. Okay, 8 times 7, that's 56. So we still have 72 hours in a week that aren't 40 hours of work and 56 hours of sleep. And so say maybe you're in a job where it's really extreme, and instead of working 40 hours, you're working 55 or 60. Let's say 60. You're still left with 52 hours a week. That is a second full-time job of hours and opportunities that we have. What are we doing with it?
Yeah.
And thinking about it, it was a thought I had coming up earlier whenever we were talking about the disciples and Jesus taking his time. I don't know what makes us think that we can, have more than 12 meetings a week or a day or whatever, but the God of all the universe, whenever he was here on earth, he had 12. Like, he had 12 people that he poured into.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it. I don't know what makes us think that we can do more than that. And so I think that we've got to watch closer how Jesus deals with people.
It's an interesting thing, and I'll throw this book out there as a resource. I read this, but it challenged my thoughts on what it looks like to minister to people and lead people, but it's called Hero Maker. And the idea of like, I don't have to be the one for the thousands.
Yeah.
What if I'm the one for the 12 that then are the one for, 100 or the one for 12, and then kind of the old the movie Pay It Forward. That's a older movie, but this idea of if I can bless 3 people who bless 3 people who bless 3 people who bless 3 people and so on, like the exponential multiplication that happens with the kingdom of God. And so this thought of like, maybe I don't have to do it for everyone. What if everyone doesn't have to know who Brett Stewart is?
Yeah.
But the 12, 20 people that are in my life that know who Brett Stewart is, I am pouring into them. And because of that, they're then pouring into their people and so on and so on. And so it just challenges, again, the way we think. It removes us from having to be the common denominator in every single God opportunity. And it's more like, you know what? All right, God, you're doing what you're doing. I want to be present. I want to be available.
Yeah. I really like the practical steps that you both came up with. And I believe it's definitely a challenge. Like we definitely have to make sure we are there for people, but at the same time, we should also know our limitations of, I can be only for a few people today, but not everyone else. Or this week, I can attend to only a few people and not everybody else. And just being there for those people and pouring into them. And at some point in a season, you could let them know that, hey, you are ready to go, or you are ready to go and pour into other people. Even though if you're walking in a rough season, I want you to go from here on and trusting God to lead you.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's definitely a challenging balance. Like we talked about, like divine appointments, our schedules, and people who want to spend time with us, and how do we balance all of that?
Yeah.
I was talking to a mentor. I was talking to my mentor almost after 2 months because so much happening in both of our worlds. And we scheduled for a phone call yesterday, and the first 45 minutes was only me talking. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I just had to dump all that on you in the first 45 minutes. And sometimes that's how it goes. Mm-hmm. And at the end of it, I asked him, like, at the 58th minute, I asked him some 2 important questions. And he was like, Zan, I have to go to the next thing, but can I call you back this afternoon and let's talk about this? And he was still being intentional, even though he had to go to the next thing. and sometimes putting that in a place where like these are really interesting questions. There is so much happening. I definitely want to talk into that and speak to you about those things. So let's talk about that this afternoon. And he gave me a call back, and we talked about it for another 25 minutes, and we touched base with those questions.
Yeah.
And I think trusting God to lead us and His Spirit to lead us is one, and not being stuck with our agenda and our plans. And sometimes we have to understand that God doesn't work in our timing. He works in His own timings, and we just have to go with that. And Pastor Braden probably knows how this timing, God's timing, is actually working in my life right now. And I just have to surrender to that and learn to be comfortable with surrendering to God.
Yeah. And with this idea of surrender, especially when it comes to time, there's this concept that I'm kind of trying to flesh out and figure out, but I call it the time tithe. So we, as believers, a lot of us have learned the concept of the tithe when it comes to finances. We believe that we can live more abundantly off of 90% of our finances and give 10% to God. We believe we can live more abundantly off of that than off of the entire 100% that we keep to ourselves. What would it look like if we did the same thing with our time? We created margin and gave it to the Lord. And maybe our calendar has less appointments, less time to schedule, but we believe that God can do more with that 90% of our time because we've given 10% to Him, and for, just margin, but we could do more with less time than if we used all of our time. And so,
well, it's how the philosopher Dave Ramsey says it, of you make your money work for you, you don't work for your money. And it's the same thing with time. Of you make your time work for you, and you don't work for your time, your calendar. You aren't a slave to your calendar. If God's outside of time, time should not be the master of your day. And so
that's good right there.
You've got to see time as a resource and not as a slave master.
Yeah, man, that's so good. I know we can talk about this for a long time. Like I literally could sit here for another 2 hours. And
but you have another appointment to get to, don't you?
Not me. I think Zan does, and so I want to honor the time that he has given to us. But yeah, we hope that this is just help it get your brain thinking about, okay, what does my calendar look like, and can I make adaptations to it? I know as Zan and I were talking before we started recording, there's parts of India, believers, leadership in India that could benefit from more scheduling and stewarding of time, but not neglecting the beauty of how present they are with people and the opportunities they have. And then here in the Western world, we could benefit from less schedule, less tasks, less events, and create more openness that, this person came along, I'm going to spend my afternoon with them and trust that God is going to do what God is going to do in both of our lives. And so hopefully that this challenges just the way you think about your time and your schedule, and I'm sure we'll have more podcasts that discuss it even further. But Zan, thank you so much for being here, and most of all, like I said at the beginning, thank you for being you, because you have modeled this so well, and I feel deeply impacted by it just simply with how present you've been. And honestly, most of the time, it probably only takes a couple more minutes. It's not like not like a significant amount of more hours. Sometimes it's just a couple more minutes. So anyways, you've modeled that really well. And again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on here and to hear a little bit more of your story. So, all right, everyone, we hope you have a great week. Be blessed. And remember, God is moving in your life beyond Sundays.